The rain hit the pavement like it had a grudge. It came down in sheets, cold and relentless, soaking through the orange neon vest until the fabric clung to his back like a second skin. The streets smelled like wet asphalt and exhaust and the kind of night that makes people feel small. Marcus Reeves, worth $412 million just 8 months ago, gripped the handlebars of the delivery bike, checked the address on his cracked phone screen, and felt nothing close to the cold he was feeling on the outside. Penthouse 12B. Of course it was. Please, if you enjoy watching my videos, please subscribe, like and comment where you're watching so we could grow together. Thank you for watching. He had been doing this for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of 6-hour shifts, cold food bags, rude customers and wet shoes. 3 weeks of doors barely opened, hands extended without eye contact, tips calculated to the exact minimum required to qualify as human decency. 3 weeks of watching how the city treated people who didn't have money, or at least appeared not to. And every single night he came home to a rented room above a laundromat on 9th Avenue, where the walls shook when the machines ran the spin cycle, and he stared at the ceiling and thought about her. About Elena. About the way she had kissed him on a Tuesday morning 6 months ago and told him he was the only person who made her feel safe. About the way she had packed a bag 4 days after the bankruptcy announcement without once asking him if he was okay. She had moved out 6 days after the news broke. She said she needed space. She said the pressure was getting to her. She said a lot of things that did not quite explain why she had blocked his personal number but still answered calls from Julian Vance. His most bitter rival, the man who had spent 3 years trying to eat his company alive from the outside. Marcus hadn't cried when he found out. He had done something far more dangerous. He had made a plan. The bankruptcy was not real. Not a single cent of it. Marcus had engineered the whole collapse in 48 hours with the help of his legal team and one very trusted CFO. He had moved assets, shuffled accounts, planted a careful leak to the financial press, and watched his world appear to burn from a very safe distance. It was a test. The cruelest kind. The kind a man only runs when he already suspects the answer but needs to be certain before he gives someone his entire future. Before he slides a ring onto her finger and says the words that cannot be unsaid. He had needed to know. 3 weeks on a bicycle in the rain had been the answer to the question he had been too afraid to ask out loud. He had bought the ring the night before the fake bankruptcy. He had been ready to propose. He had the restaurant booked, the table by the window arranged, the letter in his jacket pocket. Then at 11:47 on a Wednesday night, while Elena slept in their bedroom, he had picked up her phone to check the time and seen the notification on the screen. Not a text. A thread. Long enough that it told a full story without him having to open a single message. The messages were not explicit. They didn't have to be. It was the tone, the ease, the private jokes, the particular warmth that doesn't exist between people who are just being polite. Elena had written to Julian Vance like a woman who had already decided something and was just waiting for the timing to be right. Marcus had sat in his car outside their apartment building for 45 minutes with the ring box on the passenger seat and the restaurant number still in his recent calls, and he had made a choice. Not to confront her. Not to accuse her. To be completely, absolutely, surgically sure. Now here he was. Soaked. 34 years old, founder of the third fastest growing tech firm in the country, wearing a scratched helmet and a vest that smelled faintly of someone else's spilled coffee. The elevator in the building required a key fob to access floors above the 10th. He had anticipated this. He called the front desk from the lobby and told the board receptionist he had a delivery for Penthouse 12B. The man barely looked up before buzzing him through. That was the thing about the uniform Marcus had learned. People didn't see you. They saw the bag. They saw the inconvenience. They saw the service, never the person providing it. It was the most clarifying thing he had ever discovered about the world he lived in. The elevator was mirrored on 3 sides. Marcus caught his reflection as the floors ticked upward and did not look away. He needed to see this. He needed to lock this image in his mind, this anonymous, forgettable, rain-soaked version of himself. Because in about 4 minutes, the woman he had almost married was going to look at this exact person and tell him, without knowing she was telling him, exactly who she really was. The elevator doors opened on the 12th floor. He heard her laugh before he saw her. It floated down the short hallway from the living room, bright and musical, perfectly pitched, the laugh she used when she wanted someone to feel like the most interesting person in the room. Marcus knew that laugh the way you know a song you've heard 1,000 times. He had once believed it belonged entirely to him. He walked down the entry hall, past the abstract painting that had cost $60,000 at auction, past the floor vase that Elena had picked out on a trip to Tokyo, and stepped through the open archway. There they were. Elena was draped across the corner of a white sectional sofa, one leg tucked beneath her, a crystal champagne glass held loosely in her hand. She was wearing the red dress, the one Marcus had bought her for their anniversary dinner in Milan, the one she had worn home on the plane and said made her feel like a woman in a painting. She wore it now like it had always been hers, which he supposed she believed it was. Julian Vance sat across from her in a dark blazer with no tie, his posture loose, his smile the particular kind that belongs to men who have never once seriously doubted they would get exactly what they wanted. Neither of them looked up when Marcus walked in. Elena tilted her head slightly toward Julian, her voice dropping to the conspiratorial register she used when she wanted to sound intimate. I'm just saying I couldn't spend another minute in that tiny apartment with him. It smelled like failure. Julian made a short sound of amusement, warm and validating. You made the right choice, Elena. A woman like you deserves a king. Not a delivery boy. Marcus set the thermal food bag on the glass dining table with a heavy thud. The sound cut through the apartment like a blade through silk. Both of them looked up simultaneously. Elena's face ran through surprise, irritation and contempt in the span of a single second. A remarkable speed that told him everything he had come here to confirm. Julian's smile stayed exactly where it was. The practiced, unshakable kind. Finally. Elena's voice had that particular flatness she reserved for service staff and people whose names she hadn't bothered to learn. You're late. Just leave the food and go. And tell your manager the service was absolutely pathetic. Marcus did not move. He stood completely still in his wet vest, the rain still dripping from the brim of his helmet onto the hardwood floor, and he looked at her. Not with anger. He had burned through anger weeks ago on a wet street somewhere around the second week, around the fifth time someone had closed a door in his face without so much as a thank you. What he looked at her with now was something far quieter. Far more final. The particular stillness of a man who has already made peace with the answer to a question he never wanted to ask. Is that all you have to say to your fiancée, Elena? His voice was calm. The way a river is calm right before it drops off a cliff. Elena blinked. Then produced a laugh. The nervous one, short and dismissive, the one she used when she thought someone was making an embarrassing joke and she was deciding whether to be kind about it. What are you talking about? What fiancé? Just leave the food, Anne. Marcus reached up and pulled off his helmet. The crystal glass slipped from Elena's fingers. It caught the edge of the coffee table first. One terrible suspended moment where time seemed to consider what would happen next. And then it hit the floor and shattered into a scatter of broken pieces that caught the light and threw it back like small dead stars. Elena had gone completely still. Her mouth was open. Her champagne was spreading slowly across the white rug beneath the table and she was not looking at it. And Marcus. His name in her mouth came out fractured. Like the glass. What are you doing here? You're supposed to be sorting the accounts, you're supposed to be talking to the lawyers. You said you were handling it, you said. I am working, Marcus said. I've been working very hard for 3 weeks. Longer than that, really. I've been working on finding out who you really are when there's nothing left to benefit from. He held her gaze without blinking, without heat, without the shaking hands that would have been there 6 months ago. And it turns out you are exactly what I feared. A ghost who disappears the moment the sun goes down. Julian stood from the sofa. He was taller than Marcus by an inch and broader through the chest, and he moved across the room with the particular ease of a man who had always found his size to be a persuasive argument. Give it up, Marcus. Smooth. Dismissive. Already composing the story he would tell later. You're broke. You're standing in a neon vest dripping on my floor. You're nobody right now. Elena made her decision and it was the right one. I think it's time for you to pick up your bag and walk back out through that door before this gets embarrassing for everyone. Marcus turned to look at Julian the way you look at a problem you solved earlier in the day. Come. Already done. Actually, Julian, I acquired your company's full debt position this morning. The sentence landed in the room and stayed there. The kind of sentence that doesn't echo. Just sits. Julian's smile did not fall so much as drain. What did you say? Vance Capital has been leveraged at 140% for the last 18 months. I know because I spent the last 2 weeks reviewing your books through a proxy firm you've never heard of. Your three largest creditors were holding a combined debt package worth $208 million. I had my team acquire all three positions at 7 o'clock this morning before the markets opened. Marcus kept his voice completely level. That means you work for me now, Julian. I own the paper on everything you've built. I'd take a moment to let that land before you say anything else. Julian stood very still. The posture was the same, the width of him, the height of him, but something inside it had shifted in a way that was visible. Like a building that looks identical from the outside the moment before it comes down. Marcus turned back to Elena. She had not moved from the sofa. She was gripping the armrest with both hands, knuckles pale, her eyes moving between the two men with the rapid calculation of someone trying to determine which direction the floor was about to tilt. The bankruptcy was a test, Marcus said. Completely staged. Every asset, every account, every planted story in the financial press. My CFO and 2 lawyers know the full architecture of it. No one else. I needed to know. Not suspect, not fear, not guess. I needed to know with absolute certainty what you would do when I had nothing left to offer you except myself. Just me. No apartment, no flights, no card with no limit, no name that opens doors. He paused. How I know. The silence stretched. Elena's face was doing something complicated. Multiple things at once, moving through them the way weather moves across open water. And then the calculation finished and she stood up from the sofa, and her voice found its warmth again. The warmth she could switch on like a light. Marcus had once thought that warmth was the most real thing about her. Marcus, baby. Listen to me. I didn't mean any of those things. I was scared. When they announced the bankruptcy I panicked, I completely panicked, I didn't know how to handle it, I didn't know what to do and Julian was just there and I needed someone to talk to, I was trying to find a way to help us, to figure out how to get us through this, that is all this was. Marcus reached into the thermal delivery bag. He reached past the food containers, past everything that had been the disguise, the cover, the 3-week-long costume, and his hand found a small velvet box at the bottom of the bag, wrapped in a cloth to protect it from the weather. He brought it out slowly and set it on the glass table between them. He looked at it for one moment. Then he opened it. The diamond caught the recessed ceiling light and fractured it across the room. 10 carats. Oval cut. Platinum band. A ring that a jeweler in Antwerp had spent 6 weeks building to exact specifications. Elena's eyes moved to it with the precise inevitability of iron to a magnet. No hesitation, no detour. Just that. Fast and helpless and completely true. This was supposed to be yours tonight, Marcus said. His voice was quiet now. Not cold. Just honest. I bought it the night before the announcement. I had the restaurant booked. The one on the 42nd floor, the table by the window that looks over the bay. I had a letter in my jacket. I had rewritten it 6 times because I wanted to say it exactly right. He paused. This ring costs more than this entire penthouse. Elena took one step forward. Her hand was already rising from her side. Marcus closed the box. The soft, clean click of the latch was the loudest sound in the room. Elena's hand stopped in midair. Something moved across her face, grief or the architecture of it or the performance of it. And the honest and terrible truth was that Marcus could no longer tell the difference, and he suspected he never truly could. That was the thing no one told you about loving someone who showed you what you wanted to see. The doubt didn't come from knowing they were false. It came from never being fully certain that they weren't real. I realized something on that bike, he said. Not in a dramatic moment. Not all at once. Just slowly over 3 weeks, shift by shift, door by door. You don't love me, Elena. You love the shadow I cast. You love the woman that standing next to my name allows you to be. You love the flights and the dresses and the table at the restaurant and the version of yourself that my money made possible. The moment the shadow disappeared, the moment I looked broke, you didn't fight for me. You walked toward the next shadow. And I can't be angry at you for that. See, you are. But I will not put this ring on your finger. I will not give you that letter. And I will not give you anything else. Elena's eyes were bright. Her voice, when it came, was softer than anything she had said all night. Marcus. Please. He reached back into the thermal bag one final time. He brought out a plain yellow envelope, the standard office kind, unremarkable, the kind that could contain anything. He held it for exactly 1 second, then placed it on the table beside the closed velvet box. He set it down carefully. Not thrown, not dropped. said. Like a period at the end of a sentence. What is that? Elena's voice had gone flat again. Back to the register she used when she was calculating. Your parting gift, Marcus said. She crossed to the table and tore the envelope open with both hands. Inside was a document, 12 pages, single-spaced, dense with line items and dates and amounts. At the top, in clean black font, a simple title. And across the entire first page a large red stamp. Paid by me. Elena's eyes moved down the first column. Marcus watched her face change as she read. The Milan anniversary trip. 11,400. The birthday necklace. 8,450. The wardrobe overhaul she had called therapeutic. 22,300 itemized across 7 months. The spa membership. The car service account she had used 3 times a week. The deposits on apartments she had toured just to look, but had somehow always needed him to cover. The personal training package. The art piece she had absolutely had to have. The $6,000 red dress she was standing in right now. She turned to the second page. Then the third. The number at the bottom of page 12 was printed in bold. Elena stared at it for a long time without speaking. I'm not asking for a cent of it back, Marcus said. It was spent willingly. I knew what I was doing every time. But I wanted you to hold that number. I wanted you to feel the weight of it because when you leave here tonight you're going to build a story about what happened. You're going to make yourself the protagonist of something brave or something tragic or something complicated. And I just want you to tell the right story. The true one. Even if you only ever tell it to yourself. Elena looked up from the document. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes were dry. You can keep the dresses, Marcus said quietly. They're the only things about you that have any real value. He turned toward the door. He picked up his helmet from the table and tucked it under his arm. He did not look back at the sofa or the champagne glasses, or the broken crystal still scattered in pieces across the white rug. He walked down the short entry hallway past the $60,000 painting and the Tokyo floor vase, and pressed the elevator call button, and stood with his back straight and his hands completely still. Oh, and Julian. He said it without turning around. His voice was conversational. Easy. The voice of a man closing a tab at a bar. Don't come into the office tomorrow. Or the day after. Your access cards will be deactivated by morning. HR will send the formal notice to your registered address. Leave the parking card with the front desk on your way out. The elevator doors opened. Marcus stepped inside. In the 3-sided mirror he watched the gap between the doors narrow and close. And for one unguarded moment in the space between floors, in that particular nowhere that exists only in elevators and airports and the backseats of cars late at night, he let himself feel it. Not the triumph of the plan executed exactly right. Not the satisfaction of being proven correct. Something quieter and heavier and much harder to carry. The specific weight of being right about the thing you spent 2 years praying you were wrong about. He got back on the bike in the rain. He clipped the helmet strap. He pulled out of the building's circular drive and onto the wet street, and the city closed around him the way it always did, indifferent, enormous, and completely unbothered by what had just happened on the 12th floor. He had been riding for 6 blocks when his phone buzzed in his chest pocket. He assumed it was Raymond, his CFO, who had been calling twice an hour since the morning's acquisitions went through. He ignored it. The phone buzzed again. He pulled to a stop under a metal awning outside a closed dry cleaner and pulled the phone out with one hand. It was not Raymond's number. It was not any number he recognized. Unknown caller. The message was 3 words long. I know everything. Marcus stared at the screen. The rain hammered the awning above him. His thumb hovered over the reply button while his mind, which had spent 3 weeks running contingencies, modeling outcomes and accounting for every variable he could identify, went absolutely, completely still. Because he had told no one about the test. Not Raymond in full. Not his lawyer in full. Not his sister, not his oldest friend, not anyone who knew both him and Elena. The architecture of the fake bankruptcy had been built inside a sealed room of absolute silence, and only 3 people on Earth understood the complete picture of what he had done and why. The unknown number buzzed again. You played her. But someone's been playing you. Marcus looked up from the screen and back down the rain-slicked street toward the building he had just left. The windows of Penthouse 12B were still lit. A shadow moved across the glass behind the gauze curtain. Then another. 2 people still inside, still talking. Still in the same space. As if nothing had fundamentally changed. And this thought arrived quietly without drama, which made it far more dangerous. As if something was only just beginning. His phone buzzed a third time. This message had no words at all. Just a photograph. Marcus looked at it. The image was grainy, shot from a distance through glass with a long lens or a high zoom. But it was clear enough. Clear enough to identify the location. Clear enough to identify the two people in the frame. Clear enough to establish beyond any doubt that whoever had taken this photograph had been there on a very specific night, at a very specific moment, that no one outside the sealed room was supposed to know about. Marcus did not move for a very long time. The rain kept falling. The city kept making its enormous indifferent noise around him. Traffic and voices and the hiss of wet tires and music bleeding from a bar somewhere down the block. His face did not change. His hands did not shake. But something behind his eyes went very cold and very quiet. The particular quiet that does not come from calm, but from the exact moment a person understands that the game they thought they were playing had a much larger board than they had been able to see. Someone had known about the test before tonight. Someone had let it run. Had watched it. Possibly had helped shape it. The question was whether that someone was working against him. Or had just been protecting something he hadn't yet thought to protect. Marcus put the phone in his pocket. He sat on the bike with the engine off in the rain for a long moment and then he started it. He had one call to make and exactly one person left in his circle he still believed, completely without reservation, was loyal to him and only him. He pulled onto the street and accelerated through a yellow light. Whether that belief was still going to hold true in the next 10 minutes was the question he was riding toward. And somewhere behind him in a lit penthouse on the 12th floor, Elena was still holding a 12-page document with a number at the bottom she hadn't spoken aloud yet. She hadn't looked at her phone either. Not yet.